What is going on, Diablo 2 fans? Dobrunsky here, and today's video is my Diablo 4 developer Q&A deep dive video, which is essentially a follow-up to yesterday's video, which was my initial impressions from playing the Diablo 4 demo. Myself and a couple other Diablo content creators were given the opportunity to have one-on-one meetings with Joe Shelley and Rod Ferguson and ask numerous burning questions that we had about the development of Diablo 4. So everything from trading to seasonal themes, length and duration, drop rates, crafting, dealing with bots, rune words, etc. We had the opportunity to ask Joe and Rod Ferguson directly. Now, unfortunately, I'm not able to use any of the footage from that meeting, so you're gonna have to take all of my paraphrased responses at face value. But besides that, hopefully you guys enjoy this video. With that being said, let's jump in. So the first question that I asked was, what is the state of trading in Diablo 4? Will it evolve? Is it sort of flexible or set in stone? And what is the devs' overall approach to trading in general? The response that I got was, essentially, Diablo 3 is the one end of the extreme spectrum with the count-bound items versus Diablo 2 being the other extreme end where you can trade anything infinite amount of times. And the approach to Diablo 4 was somewhere in the middle, or at least that's where the team is trying to steer the ship. They do want to limit trading power with some items. This is flexible and can evolve, but for example, not being able to currently trade legendary items. And this is, again, in an attempt to sort of stifle real money trading websites and bots. But they do provide you with opportunities to either salvage legendary affixes to use them on other items. So if you were to drop an insane two-handed axe that had a preferable legendary affix for, let's say, a caster character, you could salvage that legendary affix and not be stuck with an item that you can't trade, that it's garbage. And also they're taking an approach with smart loot, not 100% smart loot, but a balanced approach of like 60-40, so that you're more often to drop items for the character that you're playing. So in general, that's sort of the approach that the team currently has to the state of trading in Diablo 4. So the next question that I had was the general philosophy for drop rates behind Diablo 4, because it's very apparent to hardcore Diablo players that D2 and D3 are on polar ends of the spectrum when it comes to gearing up a character. Some people don't like the thousands of runs approach of Diablo 2, while others don't like being able to essentially get geared up in less than a day in Diablo 3. And the response that I got was the general philosophy was wanting players to be able to make cool and fun builds relatively quickly with interesting dynamics and options, while still having long-term chase goals to continue to progress that character in different world tiers of difficulty. So I think this is actually a pretty good balanced approach, because one of the things that I don't actually genuinely like about Diablo 2 is certain builds are really relegated behind specific rune words or items. And it's cool that you have those chase items, but there's a lot of players that would just like to experience a lightning sorceress, for example, but they can't because they've never made infinity before. So I think this is honestly a good balanced approach for drop rates when it comes to Diablo 4. The next two questions are very short and simple, but the first is there going to be a hardcore mode in Diablo 4? And the answer is yes. For those that like the challenge of playing a hardcore character, that option will be available to you. And the next question is, will mouse and keyboard be supported on consoles? Now, this is a possibility in the future. It's not guaranteed, but the answer that I got was that essentially a current build that the dev is using does support it, and it's a possibility in the future, but there's no actual official support yet for mouse and keyboard on Xbox Series X, Series S, and PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Season duration, season themes, and the overall thought process going behind season events in Diablo 4 was another main question that I had, and the response that I got essentially was they plan to be approximately 3 months and have a central theme around a specific mechanic. So that mechanic could, for example, be rune words, it could be a sort of in-game environmental mechanic. They're not really completely fleshed out, but it's going to be a bigger seasonal theme than the Diablo 3 seasonal themes that you currently see. They're going to be unique to that specific season only, with plans to memorialize characters' achievements from that specific season. The next major question that I had was world boss events, or the actual frequency of open world events in Diablo 4. How often are they going to happen? Will the mechanics change? Are they going to be upgraded? Because one of the common criticisms that I noticed during the endgame beta phase from players was that they felt like the world boss events were a little bit lackluster, like the dynamic mechanics weren't really there, they just felt kind of slow. And the response that I got in general to that feedback was they're an evolving process, so they're not really set in stone, they're taking feedback and will adjust accordingly. But in terms of the actual world events, small events will happen more frequently, where larger events and world boss events will happen less frequently, trying to find that balance between them being exciting every time that they happen and not being overdone. So a really good comparison, in my opinion, is the Diablo clone event in D2R. It really sort of loses its appeal, I think, a couple weeks into ladder, and people don't really care anymore, where they're trying to find that frequency where these world boss events will be dynamic and will incentivize you to take part in them in the Diablo 4 world. And the final question that I had was, what is Diablo 4 going to do to prevent bots? Is there going to be strategic ban waves? Is there going to be a prevention strategy put in place? And the response that I got was essentially they wanted to make sure that the game had competitive mechanics, but they were designed to not encourage botting. So an example from Diablo 3 is just unlimited power growth from Paragon boards that incentivizes botting. An example from Diablo 2 is completely unrestricted trading, and very rare items incentivize people to run bots to trade items to make value. The two sort of combat approaches to those two problems is having somewhat restricted trading in Diablo 4, as well as having a limited amount of power that you can gain from a Paragon board. So there's no incentive to run bots to farm very rare items because you can't trade them, or there's no incentive to run bots to unlimitedly run Paragon boards to completely boost the power of a character up through the roof. So trying to find ways to keep competitive mechanics in the game, but also not encouraging bots is the approach, along with the standard sort of monitoring of bots in general. Well, that wraps up today's video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed a lot of the answers to today's questions. Again, I'm not fully for a lot of the directions that the Diablo 4 dev team is taking. I'm not a fan of the restricted trading, although it's not a deal breaker for me. The combat does in certain scenarios, like small world events or boss events, it seems slow and sort of cumbersome, doesn't really feel quite as dynamic as what I would like it. But overall, I do like the general direction that Diablo 4 is taking. Some may like it, some may be on the fence, and some may hate it. But overall, I don't think Diablo 4 is a horrible game, as some might say it is. But again, feel free to let me know in the comment section below if you guys agree or disagree. That being said, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, if you could throw a like on it, that'd be awesome. And I'll catch you guys on my next video or live stream. Peace out.
To the